This June 12th marked the beginning of the 2014 World Cup currently being held in Brazil. So I figured the least I could do to celebrate this momentous occasion is to talk about what it's like being in a soccer stadium in El Salvador. The stadium I went to a few times was El Estadio Cuscatlán. It's the largest stadium in Central America, and it's divided into different sections depending on how much you pay. And the cheapest seating area is where all the horrible and fun shit happens. Its real name is Sol General, but it's most commonly known as Vietnam. So here's what you need to know about Vietnam. There's a ton of armed police officers doing pat-downs at the entrance, but people always manage to smuggle all sorts of things in. The smell of weed smoke is always present, but you never know where it's coming from. Or a lot of times you're just sitting there drinking with your friends when you hear something thumping down the stairs coming closer to you. You turn to see what it is, and it happens to be a mortero, an M80 that's 2 seconds away from exploding. So you and everyone else in the immediate vicinity run like hell away from the explosion, being careful to not drop any of your precious beer. One time, my friends and I were at the stadium, and we saw a crowd of people running away from what we thought was a normal everyday firecracker. But when we saw that everyone was leaving their beer behind as they ran away, we knew it had to be something more serious. By the time the people had dispersed, we saw that someone had thrown a huge beehive into the crowd. So we got out of there and left our beers behind as well. Vietnam also takes its team pride seriously. My brothers were fans of a team called Alianza, so we'd go to their games. Every once in a while, someone wearing a rival team's jersey would get lost in the stadium and end up in our section, and that's when shit got crazy. The crowd would scream at him to take his shirt off if he expects to walk around in the Alianza section, and when he refused, people ran to where he was and tore the shirt right off of him. He flipped Vietnam off and walked away, his team jersey now just a ripped up rag dragging behind him. Another thing about Vietnam is that there's piss everywhere. People drink so much during the game that by halftime the bathrooms have become unusable. So if you want to piss, you can either go into the most fucked up public urinal ever known to mankind, or you can do what everyone else does and piss into a bag or cup or bottle or whatever you can get your hands on. The problem with this is that there's two kinds of people in Vietnam. There's people that piss in a bag, and the thought that comes to them is, I'm glad I can piss in this bag and not have to miss out on the game. This is great. And then there's the other people that think, it's awesome I can piss in this bag. You know what would be even more awesome though? If I threw this bag full of piss at someone else. So that's exactly what happens. People throw piss bags all around Vietnam. You're sitting there trying to enjoy the game, and you might feel sprinkles of something on the back of your neck, and you quietly hope to yourself that it was water and not piss. But sometimes you're not so lucky, and you feel the warmth of fresh urine right on your back, and you just have to sit there and take it. Because if you stand up and yell and you look for the culprit, people start calling you a culero, and you get even more bags thrown at you. One time, everyone in the crowd was on edge because if we lost our match, we didn't have a chance to qualify for the World Cup. So both teams are neck and neck until the opposing team scores a goal on us. So the player that scored the goal runs up to Vietnam and he starts celebrating and blowing kisses at us. And he got pelted with so many piss bags that the match had to be stopped so he could change his uniform. I was in Vietnam one time with my friends, and we were all drunk and having a good time. And the El Salvador team scores an amazing goal. So everyone jumps up to celebrate. And me and my friends start jumping in place and cheering. But then one of my friends gets hit with a dirty rag that's soaked, dripping with piss. And it clings onto his head while he spins around trying to get it off. Like some sort of pea octopus that just wouldn't let go of his skull. The worst piss-related incident was another game I went to with the same friends. Beer was 2 for 1 that day, and people in the stadium were taking full advantage of it. A group of guys had bought a 2-liter bottle of soda, and after they drank it all, they cut off the top and were using the bottle to piss into it. We were sitting on the step right below them, so we were cautious from the start. That same game, we met a nice dude that had brought his kid along for his first stadium experience. The kid saw the El Salvador players on the field, and his dad would tell him, "Look at that, there's Fito Celaya." Or look over there, that's Rudy's Corrales. And me and my friends are shit-faced, and we see this heartwarming moment, and we're all, see, that's what it's all about right there. So the kid tells his dad he's hungry, and they get up and walk to a Keko's Burger food cart. The dad orders 2 burgers, and he tells his kid that eating a Keko's Burger at the stadium is pretty much a rite of passage. There's nothing like the taste of your first Keko's Burger. So their burgers are ready, and as the lady's handing them over, the other team scores on El Salvador. The player that scored the goal runs in front of Vietnam, and he starts taunting the crowd. and one of the drunk guys that's on the row behind us gets angry, and he grabs the 2-liter bottle, which is now overflowing with piss. Me and my friends look on in terror as this nice dude high-fives his kid and goes for a bite of his Gecko's burger, completely unaware of what's about to unfold. The drunk guy runs down the stairs and tries to splash the player with the piss, but his aim is off. And the dad gets drenched, his entire face, his chest, all of it completely coated with the urine of these drunk strangers. So the dude stands there motionless for a good 3 seconds, his Gecko's burger soaking wet and neon yellow. When he finally opens his eyes, he drops the burger onto the ground and he tells his kid, "Son, let's go home." Whenever I tell people about Vietnam, they ask me why anyone would ever want to go there if something terrible always ends up happening. And it's hard to explain, but Vietnam is a pretty special place. It's chaotic and scary, sure, but people always make the best of it. And there's moments where you wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world. That time my friend got hit with the piss rag sucked, but after he managed to get it off, people were high-fiving him and offering to buy him beers for putting on a great show. The time that guy got his shirt ripped off was messed up, but he came back to Vietnam some moments later with a smile on his face, and he asked if anyone had a spare Alianza jersey. A huge guy took his shirt off and invited him to hang out with his group, and throughout the game he was the star of Vietnam, jumping around with an Alianza shirt that was 3 sizes too big for him. And for me, the time that the beehive was thrown into the crowd was scary, but it also turned out pretty awesome. After everyone ran away from the bees, some people that had left their beer behind kept trying to creep their way back in and retrieve their cups without getting stung. So whenever someone grabbed their beer cup and ran away from the bees, everyone in Vietnam rooted for them. When it was my turn, I dashed in and I snatched my beer cup from underneath the angry swarm. And as I was running away to safety, I heard the thunderous wave of emotion coming from the hundreds of people all around. Everyone cheering for me as I was being chased by bees in a stadium littered with bags full of piss. So that feeling is what Vietnam is all about, and I'm glad that I was lucky enough to experience it.